What is the polite way to ask for oral?
I think you just, I don't. You don't? No, I just kind of.
Do you go down first?
Absolutely.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday nights searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? Have you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you? I'm one of your three hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me is Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene Lyons.
Let's not start sucking each other's dicks just yet.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week, the audience selects from 4 movie choices that we then break out our race car VHS tape rewinder and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of each podcast, the three of us will give you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. This week's theme was crime movies. Big D, was that the crime? Was that the situation?
Yeah, I think it was crime movies. There were some big ones up. It was this, Scarface. I don't remember the other two, but it was hands down Pulp Fiction was the winner.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by that because I had never seen Scarface before. So I really was hoping for Scarface. But Pulp Fiction, I mean, we could just stop the podcast right now and just say it's by far the best movie we've ever done.
You read my mind, Raj. I was also going for Scarface just because I'd never seen it. And when we had Pulp Fiction, I was like, oh, man. And then I watched it and remembered, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell neither of you have seen Scarface. How's that possible?
I didn't grow up in the ghetto and idolize this movie. I don't know, like, or idolize Scarface, rather.
You lived in Florida.
Yeah, well,
the ghetto. It's Miami,
no,
South Florida.
Yeah, but I feel like everyone, if you didn't have a Pulp Fiction poster frame above your dorm room bedroom, you had one of Scarface. I was in the Pulp Fiction crowd.
I also was Pulp Fiction, yep.
And so, I mean, like, this defined the 90s, right? This movie not only defined, I think, movie making, because it turned Hollywood on its head, right? This was the bright point and a low point in Hollywood. This is the adrenaline shot Hollywood needed. This set the tone for movie making in the 90s.
And really, you think about this is 1994. Pulp Fiction was out there bringing independent film into the forefront. Then you had grunge music that was like, this is real music with, you know, all the pop elements kind of taken out of it. I thought that this was going to be the path to the future forever. Like that things were just going to get more and more real each year. I was so wrong.
Yeah, we talk about how 1984 was a great year. I'm trying to think if we had had another Academy Award nominated film. Definitely not a Best Picture, but this was nominated in 95 with Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, Quiz Show, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, I think. All good movies. I mean, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, I could take it or leave it. But great year, great movie, and I'm glad the fans picked it.
Well, it's crazy to think that Pulp Fiction, like you said, was in theaters at the same time as Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, Jurassic Park. Unfortunately, that year, Forrest Gump won the best movie, which is, I think, in my opinion, is a travesty, right? Forrest Gump, I think, won based upon its nostalgic elements that it had. It's a fine movie. It's a fine movie, but it just had, Tom Hanks kind of, being a slow, dim-witted feather that floated through, important periods in life. It's nowhere near as groundbreaking as Pulp Fiction, which changed movie making, or even Jurassic Park with, the fact that it set the tone for special effects. I personally don't believe Forrest Gump should have ever won the best movie in 1995.
A lot of people agree with you, but you have to remember, we're looking back now with hindsight of roughly, 30 years?
Right.
At the time, this movie almost got an NC-17 rating. People didn't know what to make of it. They didn't know what to think of it. It pushed the front on many things, from language to violence. It really had no shot, I think, of winning with Academy voters. Today we can see it, and Forrest Gump is what it is. It's a soda pop, typical summer movie with Tom Hanks. But at the time, I don't think they knew what the hell to do with Quentin Tarantino.
Well, I mean, this comes on the heels of Reservoir Dogs, right? And Reservoir Dogs was the 1992 film that kind of took the Cannes Film Festival by storm, as did Pulp Fiction, right? I mean, this won the Palme d'Or award at Cannes for being the best film. So I think foreigners knew how to respond to it by giving it like the best movie. Like, and again, looking back on it, this was the first independent film to eclipse $200 million. I believe it was what, $9.5 million was the budget, and then it grossed $214 million. I mean, Roger Ebert said that this is the most important film that was made in America from 1983 to 2009.
Who is this Roger Ebert fellow you speak of?
It's part of our family. But yeah, I mean, this is by far my favorite film to go back and look at. And again, we just got done watching The Highlander, which was, over 2 hours. This movie is also over 2 hours, and I wanted to watch it again right away.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The 2 hours flew by, and I was thinking the same exact thing. I was tempted, and this is like, it's probably like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm like, could I fit another viewing in? It was that good. Like, I could watch this movie over and over again and have.
Yeah. So Pulp Fiction, like we said, is a 1994 American black comedy neo-noir crime film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino from a story by Tarantino and Roger Avery, directed in a highly stylized manner. Pulp Fiction connects the intersecting storylines of Los Angeles mobsters, fringe players, small-time criminals, and a mysterious briefcase. The film's title refers to the pulp magazines and hard-boiled crime novels popular during the mid-20th century, known for graphic violence and punchy dialogue. So what were your first memories? Like, where were you in 1994 when this movie came out?
I was 14 years old, and my cousin, who was 6 years older, who was 20, he had discovered this movie. He went to the theaters and he saw it. And at that time, it had come to the dollar movies. And so the Tempe Dollar Cinemas, we would go several times a week. This became my life when I was in middle school. Basically, entire school days were lost just thinking about it. And literally for several weeks, it was all I did was go to Pulp Fiction and then wait until the next time I could go to Pulp Fiction. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I think this was the first movie that we reviewed where I was an adult. I was 21 at the time. So I remember hearing about the movie because it was released in October. It was clearly Academy Award film bait. It's released in that time frame right before Christmas, so it's eligible. And I heard, it's groundbreaking. The commercials were kind of out there. And I said, you know what, let's give it a chance. I went and saw it with a couple friends, and I think our heads exploded.
Yeah, for me, I think I was like 14 as well, and my parents came back. They went and saw it with like my neighbors. I remember they came back and they said they didn't like it. They like my parents. My mom was like, "Oh, it just had such gratuitous language and violence. I don't understand why they put that in the movie. It was just over the top." And then I rented it later on in when I was in high school, and I remember thinking at this point in my life, this is when I absolutely knew for certain my parents have terrible taste in movies, because this movie was great. And this was also the movie that like every cool hipster kid in the 90s loved and adored, right? And I remember like Urge Overkill's music video on MTV constantly playing. And I remember having the album Pulp Fiction in my Chevrolet Celebrity CD collection. That's what I had. I always listened. It was amazing. And then to think that Quentin Tarantino came from a clerk at a LA video store and then, became this groundbreaking film director and producer, gave me hope that maybe at one point I could ever do something like this.
Well, you've got a podcast about movies.
That's right. Close. I do.
You made it, Raj. You made it.
I've made it. Absolutely. So without further ado, Big D, play the trailer.
Miramax Films is proud to present one of the most celebrated motion pictures of the year. The winner of the 1994 Palme d'Or. The best picture of the Cannes Film Festival.
Come on, let's get in character. Why are you so interested in Big Man's wife? Well, he's going out of town in Florida, and he asked me if I'd take care of her while he's gone. Take care? No, man. Just show her a good time, make sure she don't get lonely. Girl. You see, this is a moral test of oneself.
I do believe Marsellus, my husband, your boss, told you to take me out and do whatever I wanted.
Whether or not you can maintain loyalty.
Night of the fight, you may feel a slight sting.
Pride only hurts. It never helps. In the fifth, your ass goes down.
I have to say, play with matches, you get burned.
We should have shotguns for this kind of deal.
We're in a lot of danger, aren't we?
I'm prepared to scour the earth for that movie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Get down, get down.
You got a corpse in a car, minus a head in a garage. Take me to it.
Don't you hate that?
Hey, what?
Uncomfortable silences.
John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, Maria de Medeiros, Ving Rhames, Eric Stoltz, Rosanna Arquette, Christopher Walken, and Bruce Willis.
Looking at something, friend?
Ain't my friend looking.
Die, you mother!
A new film directed by Quentin Tarantino. Pulp Fiction.
You really thinking about quitting?
Most definitely.
What you gonna do then?
Basically, I'm just gonna walk the earth.
What you mean walk the earth?
You know, like Kane in Kung Fu.
All right, so like we said, this movie has become like a staple in modern pulp culture.
You know, I'd mentioned that this movie pushed a couple fronts at the time. And one of the big things that Hollywood had not seen at that point was the unconventional, hip, trendy dialogue that Quentin likes to use. And part of that more realistic, gritty depiction of life is the use of excessive four-letter words, racial slurs, racial generalizations. Within the first few minutes, we get, slurs against Asians, Jewish, African Americans. For God's sake, there's 265 F-bombs dropped in this movie. Almost got an NC-17, so people didn't really know what the hell to do with this dialogue.
But let's think about this. So this is also the early era. So are you a big Tarantino fan today, Big D and Gene? Like when a Tarantino film comes out, do you have to rush to the theaters and see it?
Yeah, I am a pretty big fan. I really enjoyed most of the things that came out, especially Django was absolutely brilliant. I think one of the lesser celebrated ones was Inglourious Bastards. I thought was a brilliant film.
Yeah.
Anything with Christopher Waltz, really. But I will see a Tarantino, and this is the thing. We know his shtick. I get it. I understand that it's a Tarantino film. But much like Wes Anderson, I'm still going to see it because I just want more of it. I want Pulp Fiction to last for the rest of my life, just more and more installments of the same thing.
I really loved early Tarantino. And watching this movie again, it really hit me how talented he was. I think in the last few years, he's gotten a bit away from this raw, more realistic writing and creation to be more a cute version of himself. He's kind of bought into his own mythology and his own ego. His dialogue often borders on pretentious. It can easily go one way or the other. And sometimes in his latest stuff, it really pushes me the other way. But here, this was clean, pure, unadulterated Tarantino.
I agree, Big D. In my notes, I actually put down that this is where I fell in love with Tarantino. And yeah, the stuff currently is not necessarily as good, but there are scenes, there are moments where that comes through. I was thinking about Django Unchained and the scene where Christopher Waltz presents the arrest warrant, essentially, to Don Johnson, and he's kind of just, and you've got this situation where you've got, slavery and gratuitous violence all around, and this man is eloquently explaining how the arrest warrant is to be presented. And it's like they take these moments to just stop and just bathe and luxuriate in the script.
Yeah, a movie or film has become a staple of modern pop culture when you can say just a few words. Foot massage, quarter pounder with cheese, Royale with cheese, and people get the reference. You and I were going back and forth because each movie you pick a quote. We probably sent 15 quotes back and forth that were good enough to be your quote for any other movie. And in here, there was just one right after another. Incredible writing.
Well, when I think of Quentin Tarantino, like you said, you think of the dialect. And here's why I don't believe Tarantino has become a shell of himself. Because right around early 90s, a little independent filmmaker made a very low-budget film called Clerks. And it was, if you look at, the style of filmmaking that Kevin Smith also makes, he's very... it was a different type. It was dialogue heavy, but an interesting real life dialogue that was I don't know. It was just something that Hollywood had never seen, and I kind of compare that to Tarantino. Well, I think Tarantino has evolved, and his movies like The Hateful Eight, which I absolutely love, and I think it still holds up. I haven't seen Kevin Smith make a really, really, really good movie in a long time, and that's why I think he and Tarantino have kind of veered off in their different careers.
Yeah, amen to that, Raj. I was thinking along the same lines about Tim Burton. Edward Scissorhands is one of my favorite movies of all time, in my top 5 easily, and it still kills me every time I watch it. But Tim Burton now, it's just it's a caricature of what it was. It's not worth watching anymore. And Tarantino, I don't feel that way. I feel even though it's not the same stuff, it's still very, very good stuff.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, and there's entire websites that we'll post on our social media that explain it in much more detail than we can here in an hour. But from what I understand, the entire Tarantino-verse is all connected, right? It's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where like Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 is a movie within. So characters from Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction would actually watch Kill Bill. So they're all kind of connected, which I think is really cool. But if this is your first time listening to the podcast, here's how it goes. We're going to go through the plot of the movie, give our impressions, our reviews of it, and then at the end we'll give our Shat meter. So the movie starts out late one morning at the Hawthorne Grill, a restaurant on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. A couple of young Brits called Honey Bunny and Pumpkin discuss the pros and cons of robbing banks versus liquor stores. They then add restaurants to the equation, realizing they can make more by taking customers' wallets than they can out of the till. The two kiss, declare they love each other, stand up in their booth, announcing they're robbing the diner. Meanwhile, two hitmen, Jules and Vincent, arrive at the apartment of Brett to retrieve a briefcase for their boss, gangster Marsellus Wallace. Vincent retrieves the briefcase and Jules shoots one of Brett's associates, then delivers a passage from the Bible before he and Vincent kill Brett.
I mean, right out the chute, the opening sequence with the title scroll, you're in for something different. You have Kool and the Gang playing Jungle Boogie, and halfway through you start hearing the radio station change and the music shift. So right away you got to be thinking this is something different. But I love the way Tarantino used, because it's based on Pulp Fiction, which is literary, that they actually broke it down like it was a book where you see chapter titles. And it was, granted, it was out of order, but it forced you to kind of watch. And that each section was broken out by a title like it was a novel, I thought was a great way to do it.
Speaking of the music involved in this, one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard, probably the best soundtrack. It's right up there with, you guys are going to laugh, but Clueless was also a very good soundtrack, and Above the Rim. This is one of the best soundtracks. I owned it, I still own it, and I played it all the time. But interesting thing about the soundtrack is it's part of the reason why I know this movie so well, why I can recite every word from every scene with this movie, is the fact that they included that dialogue in the soundtrack, and it's not annoying. It's actually like it makes you enjoy the soundtrack more. It's that good. You don't even need the visuals to enjoy this stuff.
What's great with his soundtracks is, these songs now, you look at them, they're all classics, but at the time, I don't know that many of them had a wide audience, that everyone knew it. Now you look back and every single one At the time, they were kind of unheard of. They were a little under the radar. So he had a great ear. Tarantino loves music for picking songs that were by popular artists but weren't well known and making them their own. All these songs now you associate with Pulp Fiction, not the reverse.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Reservoir Dogs. It's, Stuck in the Middle with You, like the Steelers Wheel,
Little Green Bag.
Little Green Bag. Yeah, all these songs that you just every single movie kind of works that way. Another thing that struck me though is that opening diner scene, as we've mentioned before, way more racist than I remember. Like it made me realize that I was an insensitive little shit at 14 because that didn't faze me at all. Now at 36, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah, you mentioned that I think the movie had 265 F-bombs. Honestly, I didn't notice the bad language throughout the entire movie because I think it's used skillfully. And in fact, people who don't understand why the characters like Vincent Vega or Honey Bunny and Pumpkin, why they have those type of conversations in a non-linear narrative, the conversations that they're having set up scenes later and set up the characters. It's done very purposefully, and that's why I think other movies like Highlander, for instance, when they tried to do a non-linear narrative, it doesn't fucking work. You could have put those things in order and it would have been the same movie. You can't do that with Pulp Fiction.
Blockbuster movies rarely are written like this. Even for Tarantino, this is a particularly well-written movie. And you know it because the scenes that are most quoted have very good dialogue, but scenes that are never quoted still have incredible dialogue. I was thinking about this in the scene where Jules and Vincent Vega are going into the apartment. Everyone remembers the apartment scene with the shooting, but before that, they're talking about how Mia Wallace did a pilot, and Vincent says, "What's a pilot?" And he goes, "Well, it's something when when they're going to make a TV show." And Vincent replies, "I don't watch TV." Well, you're aware that there's an invention called the television. Like that's just walking into the place. And I think now about movies that we consider good movies these days. When you go see something like Captain America Civil War or something like that, these blockbuster movies that we consider huge. And we go, look at the script of this thing. It is so dumb basic.
It is.
But you have to realize what happens here. These are normal, mundane, real-world conversations that people would have. Normal Hollywood, you don't hear someone talking about, picking up their dry cleaning or a burger description or, what they've done on a trip or just talking about the meaning of a foot massage. This could be boring in any other movie, but here it rings true. And you talk about when they walk up to Brett's apartment. I got to tell you, you love the writing. I love the visuals. His camera work lets the scene breathe a lot of time. They pull up to the apartment and Vincent and Jules get there a little bit early because Jules wants to be there on time. The camera is following them at the door. He realized they're early. They walk off. The camera sits stationary at the door, lets Jules and Vincent walk maybe 10, 15 feet away, continue their conversation. They finish and walk back. Who else has the balls to let the scene really breathe without having a smash cut and getting up in their face and hearing the dialogue? Beautiful to watch.
Yeah, the only thing that I didn't like from a directing choice that Tarantino made is part of this first, or I guess part of these scenes, when they ultimately shoot the characters and it's flashing red. Nowhere else in the movie do they do that, and that's where I felt like it didn't need to be done.
I agree. I thought it was a reference to the title Pulp Fiction, but also it could have been seen as the presence of that thing that happened, right? That divine intervention. That's why it was doing that.
That's interesting. I never realized that. But other movies that have tried to emulate or copy Tarantino by having a normal conversation don't understand that the normal conversations serve a purpose in the plot of the movie. The words set up the scenes and the characters. And I think that's important in a Tarantino film. Now, the question that I have for you, Gene, is what the fuck is in the briefcase?
What's in the case has been hotly debated ever since this movie came out. A lot of people said it was Marsellus Wallace's soul. They as evidence, they used the 666 on the case code, the fact that he's got a bandage on the back of his head where presumably his soul was taken out, and that it's the most beautiful thing people have seen. But when asked about it, Quentin Tarantino said it's just a MacGuffin, which I had to look up. It's a plot device where they have a goal or a desired object or another motivator that the protagonist pursues, but there's no real reason for it, like the Maltese Falcon, other stuff like that. They just kind of set it up as the thing that you're pursuing. So they actually thought it was more interesting to just make it nothing in particular, and you have to kind of guess what's in the case.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Band-Aid on the back of his head. That actually was just a nick that Ving Rhames has gotten while he was shaving his head before shooting. And Tarantino liked the visual aesthetic of it and told him to leave it on. So when you create a quality product like this, people will start to see things in the details that aren't even there. I want to go back to the Ezekiel quote. I'm sure all of us could rip it off. And I thought, I'm not a religious guy, I thought it was actually based in scripture. But it turns out a majority of it was improvised, that only the last part really comes from Ezekiel 25:17. Did you know it was fabricated?
Yeah, actually, it's not improvised. It's actually written down in the script. The full quote, it was actually from a Sonny Chiba film, Karate Chiba, also known as The Bodyguard, which it's a movie in 1976 where it's both shown as a scrolling text and read by an off-screen narrative. The version can be seen at the beginning of The Bodyguard. The actual Bible quote, Ezekiel 25:17 from the King James Version says, "I will execute great vengeance on them with furious rebukes, and they shall know that I am the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon them." So the full quote actually comes from a Sonny Chiba film, but there is actually part of Ezekiel 25:17 or 25:17, which does actually exist in the Bible. But sometime later, champion boxer Butch Coolidge, played by Bruce Willis, accepts a large sum from Marsellus Wallace to take a dive in his upcoming match.
The second that this scene starts out, you've got Bruce Willis looking at the camera. It's this beautifully red lit room, and you got Al Green's Let's Stay Together playing. Right away, you know that this movie has 10 times the style of anything we've done so far. Every other movie that we've done, whether they were great or poor, the shots were done in the most logical way, right? Like, you show the guy talking, it's showing his face, you know where he's going. They're shot to basically give the viewer the best picture of what's going on. This is different. Marsellus Wallace is talking the entire scene. You don't see him. You see the back of his head a bit, but really for the first few minutes, you just see Bruce Willis's face, and that acting job that he's got to do, just listening and really playing that role, the patience that they show is tremendous. Again, greatest movie of all time.
We talk here about some of the issues that people at the time had. Language was one, the other was violence. You said that a lot of people, your parents, Raj, didn't like it because it was violent. And I remember thinking it was the most violent thing. And that was one of the problems people had when it first came out. But looking back on it now, very little of the violence actually happens on screen. Whether it's Marsellus being raped by the hillbillies, Butch killing Zed with the sword, it's all shown off screen. Even Marvin getting his head blown off, we don't see the bullet hit him in the face. You just see the entire explosion of brain matter in the back window. You don't see any of it. They don't even show us the adrenaline stab in the heart. So the violent aspect that people were afraid of it, I don't think it holds up. Looking back now, I think he did a beautiful job of hiding that and not making it gratuitous.
Yeah, it was very Spielberg-esque, right? Like, Tarantino is absolutely known for hating sex scenes. So even like the sex scene, the rape by Marsellus Wallace at the end, you don't actually see that. You see a little bit of, a man, thrusting, but it's not a gratuitous scene, and it's not there forever. And compared to these other movies like Django Unchained or Death Proof, or some of the other ones where it's more out there, and the blood is over the top, there's actually very little blood in this movie. Even when they shoot Vincent Vega,
that's the only violent you see. You actually see him shot. Yeah. Everything else is off screen and insinuated, and that's the mark of a true artist.
Well, except for Zed getting his dick blown off.
Yeah, that's true, but you couldn't see his dick.
You can't really see it. Yeah, he just it's.
Hold on, what movie showed the guy's dick literally getting blown off?
I think there is a movie that did that, right? Isn't there a movie where I know there's a GIF of a dick being blown off somewhere? I don't know what movie it's from.
I think that's on your external drive.
Oh, that's
Rod.
right.
That's his Grindr account.
That's all right. So Vincent and Jules deliver the briefcase. So the next day, Vincent purchases heroin from his drug dealer, Lance. He shoots up to pass the day, then drives to meet Mia, Marcellus's wife, who Marcellus has asked Vincent to escort while he's out of town. They head to some Jackrabbit Slims, a 1950s themed restaurant, and participate in a twist contest, then return to the Wallace house with the trophy. While Vincent is in the bathroom, Mia finds the heroin, mistakes it for cocaine, snorts it, and overdoses. Vincent rushes her back to Lance's house, where they revive her with an adrenaline shot to her heart.
Okay, so first things first, Lance. Before seeing Lance, I only knew about drug dealers because of Dare. And so I thought that they were like these narcos with like Uzis and masks, and they were scary. Lance is the first accurate depiction of a drug dealer I ever saw. And now friends of mine who deal drugs or friends of mine who buy drugs, when I've gone with people on drug buys, that's usually the guy you see. He's kind of chill. He's in a bathrobe. He's just telling you about the products. Everything's cool. You're welcome to hang out and shoot up or smoke right there. Lance is the best.
Yeah, I've done plenty of drugs in my day, to the chagrin of my wife, but I never, ever did any kind of injections. Heroin was not on my repertoire. But I got to tell you, the shots that he strung together, showing the entire process of cooking, of pulling out, almost unrolling your toolkit of the needles and the spoon and cooking it, and then cutting it in with the kind of distorted vision of Vincent driving that Malibu down the street, It was a great representation, and it's what I imagine shooting heroin would feel like and would be like.
Do you think that this movie had any kind of was it responsible for glamorizing the idea of heroin or wanting to shoot up heroin?
Fuck no.
Okay.
Heroin's no way. You see what happens to Mia. There was nothing, I think, appealing or making it cool to shoot heroin. No way. I don't think you could do that.
So I learned in my research that ultimately Tarantino had the final cut as part of his contract. The only note that Jeffrey Katzberg, who was head of the studio at the time, when the Weinsteins brought this to him, is he said, don't go over the top with the heroin. Like, don't make it seem too glamorous.
I think it's very hard to make something as destructive as heroin look attractive, but I had no idea that Vincent's 64 Malibu was actually Tarantino's.
Not only that, but it was actually stolen during the production.
Yeah, and it was gone for 19 years. It finally turned back up in 2013 when they found some kids chopping it up. So he finally got that car back, but Tarantino has that, Malibu still, and he has the infamous Kill Bill pussy wagon.
So there's rumors that it was written in the script, the line of where Vega talks about how his Malibu was keyed. There's rumors that that's where that line came from, is when it was stolen. He's like, how do you fuck with another man's automobile? Like, that was thrown back into the script. The other rumor is that ties Vincent with Butch, when Butch and Vincent have their kind of like their little thing at the bar. Supposedly, people claim that Butch went out after that exchange and keyed Vega's car, which I think would be brilliant.
I love that in that scene also, he calls him Punchy and Palooka.
Palooka.
Which is, I mean, again, it's just wonderful. But, when Vince does drive this Malibu over and he goes to pick up Mia Wallace, he's high on the heroin. He looks like he's having just a great time. The wind's blowing in his hair. He's smiling. And I love this side of Vincent Vega. I love that we got to see this. The scene, which has now become an internet meme and brings me just joy day after day, is when he's confused by the intercom and just looking around. This John Travolta is showing a side of himself that I never saw in his earlier movies, where he's able to laugh at himself, but also his ability throughout this scene and into Jackrabbit Slims and into the twist contest of really playing up that high on life. It's this mellow comedy. It doesn't get mellower than heroin comedy, right? It's just so good.
And I love the way that Tarantino chooses to introduce us to characters. We mentioned the scene where we meet Marsellus from behind. We don't actually see him. This entire first visit to Mia's house, I didn't realize we don't see her. You have to be wondering the first time we watched it, what would Marcellus's wife look like? Vincent shows up at the door. We hear the voiceover where Mia's reading the note. He never once sees her. It's only the voice in the intercom and her lips, leaving us to wonder, what would this badass man's wife look like? And I love that.
Were you pleased that it was a 23-year-old Uma Thurman?
I think it's believable.
Oh, God. This movie made me realize how much I love fucking Uma Thurman. Uma Thurman was wonderful.
Wait,
in this movie.
Fucked Uma Thurman?
No, how much I love Uma Thurman.
You have to put a comma there.
This movie shows us a lot of Uma Thurman's feet, which is then repeated in Kill Bill, which is making me wonder if there's some sort of a thing there with Quentin Tarantino and Uma Thurman's feet. You also see them in the twist contest at Jackrabbit Slims. I, by the way, have won 3 contests in my life, twist contests, and they were all based entirely on Travolta's moves in the twist contest in Jackrabbit Slims. What did you guys think of that Jackrabbit Slims scene? Like, is it a crowning achievement? What could you have done without it?
I was completely disappointed when I found out the fact that there actually was no Jackrabbit Slims in Los Angeles that had a Planet Hollywood impersonator theme type restaurant, where you could go get a $5 milkshake. I was extremely disappointed by that. In fact, the building that's used for Jackrabbit Slims is actually the headquarters of Disney Imagineering, which at the time Miramax was owned by Disney, so that makes sense why they use that as the outdoor facade. And the actual production and the set was I think it cost $150,000 to build that in a warehouse on Disney Studios, which was the largest budget item in the entire movie, which makes sense. I love the scene personally. I think it makes the movie, and the reason why, and looking back on it, when I used to think that this scene was out of place, the whole time you have to think to yourself, and I think it's brilliantly now that, I think of myself as a student of movies, the audience is supposed to look at this through the lenses of a high Vincent Vega. You're Vincent Vega, you're high on heroin, and they take you to a restaurant where it's nothing but dead celebrities. He's freaking out the entire time. He's looking around, like, what is going on at this particular moment? But then he gets involved in it, which I think is wonderful, and it's subtly done.
Yeah, I love that he was able to point out like the differences between the impersonators too that even Mia Wallace didn't recognize, like who was who. Like he's like, no, that one, And one of the ones that I caught this time that I didn't catch before was the dwarf that goes through, and that's supposed to be a Johnny Roventini impersonator who was like the spokesman for Philip Morris cigarettes and also was instrumental in I Love Lucy. But I mean, so they went to like some serious. I mean, again, this is Tarantino showing his love of Hollywood in just these little subtle ways. But yeah, you're absolutely on point, Raj. You were supposed to see this through the eyes of a high and very much enjoying himself through milkshakes and dancing and everything else. Vincent Vega.
Yeah. So I also learned that there's actually now a Jackrabbit Slims. It was opened up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't know if they have $5 milkshakes or not, but it's based 100% on the Jackrabbit Slims. So if any of our listeners live in the Milwaukee area or are near Milwaukee or going to Milwaukee on business, please go to Jackrabbit Slims and then email us. Let us know if it's any good. The other thing I notice now about this scene that I didn't is the connection with Fox Force 5 and the Deadly Viper Squad in Kill Bill. You can totally tell like that was the inspiration for Kill Bill is utilizing the Fox Force 5 and her character that she plays. So there's a again conspiracy that says Mia Wallace is actually playing the bride in that movie, like the actress Mia Wallace is. Anyway, so Butch double crosses Marsellus and wins the bout at the motel where he and his girlfriend Fabienne are lying low. Butch discovers she has forgotten to pack his father's watch, a beloved heirloom, and flies into a rage. He returns back to his apartment and retrieves the watch, but notices a gun on the kitchen counter and hears the toilet flush. Vincent exits the bathroom and Butch shoots him dead.
So this scene with Christopher Walken, where he's explaining the importance of his watch, or it's a memory from his childhood, has to be the single greatest film monologue of all time. I used to think that the scene was just funny and humorous, but now watching it, it truly justifies Butch, his willingness to flip on Marsellus and double cross him. It's not just the watch. If you listen to the conversation that Captain Coons is having, it's about the integrity of his father, that a man is only worth his word. That's what makes Butch flip. Previous watching, I just thought it was funny about the watch up his ass for 5 years, but this is the trigger that causes Butch to double cross.
This was the first time I saw Christopher Walken in a movie like that I actually remember, seeing. And I could just imagine them writing the script out and anybody could deliver this scene and it would be funny. But then someone must have said, it'd be amazing. Christopher Walken saying this because his delivery, there's no one else who could do it the same. And again, that camera angle of just being on him and letting the actor do the work. It was amazing.
Well, let me ask you this, because you're seeing it also from Butch's eyes. Let's say this happened to you. You lost your father in Vietnam, and then one of his platoon members comes to you and hands him the ass watch. Do you carry that on your, like, do you wear the ass watch? Like,
you have to.
Do you really?
You have to. It's the only thing that his father left him. It's his, what he calls it, his birthright. It's the only piece of his father that he has left. He would do anything to protect it, and him going back, even though he knows he's facing likely death, it's believable.
I have a necklace from my dad. It was torn off his neck when he died, essentially, after he had a heart attack in 1979. And it's literally the only physical item I care about. Like, I will fucking do anything to protect it.
No, I mean, I get wearing an heirloom from your father, but your father's necklace didn't sit up another man's ass for 2 years, did it?
No, if anything, that makes it even more valuable. The fact that he was willing to go through that. For God's sake, he died of dysentery. Can you imagine going through dysentery and still having to hide this hunk of metal up your ass? That's dedication, and Butch has to revere that.
Okay, so Butch, he's supposed to throw the fight, but he wins in the first round. This part I completely forgot. I completely forgot that he actually killed in the boxing match, the other fighter, and then he escapes in the taxi cab driver driven by a Colombian. I found it to be one of the sexiest scenes. Just Via de Lobos, she's like, so tell me what it was like to kill another man. Maybe it's just my attraction for Colombians. I don't know.
I think it has to be because easily Mia Wallace dancing is way hotter than this. But again, people will point to scenes and go, why was this in here? Was it necessary? Could he have just ended up where he was ending up? She doesn't appear in the movie again. No, absolutely not. This conversation, again, between Butch and Villalobos was critical into understanding Butch's background, his view, his worldview, and also, just injecting that bit of transition and also that bit of dialogue. I do think if there's a scene to cut, it's what follows. The scenes with Fabienne, I could have absolutely done without. They killed the momentum of the film. They were just a little too cutesy, although they did bring us to the line, "Will you kiss it?" when he's asking for oral sex. For years, I thought this was the polite way to ask for oral. So I thought it'd be very crude to ask a woman for a blowjob. So I would say, "Will you kiss it?" Thank God I quit that because as an adult, I realized that is creepy as fuck.
What is the polite way to ask for oral?
I think you just I don't. You don't. No, I just kind of.
Do you go down first?
Absolutely.
And then it's kind of that's your way of asking. Is you go first.
No.
That's it. No, I'm with you. I'm like I feel like the polite way to ask is like, "Hey, will you go down?"
Listen. The key,
which I think is better than "Will you kiss it?"
The way to increase your chance of a blowjob 100-fold is a fresh shower and a towel and having a conversation. That is the way that you get your lady into the mood.
I just don't phrase it as a question.
No.
So you just say, "Go down on me"?
Yes.
Yeah. Nice. I like the scenes with. I do feel like it slows down the movie. And I didn't really like the actresses, but after dating foreign women, I like her. I dig her accent. I like that she's dedicated to Butch, and I get the sense that maybe she's pregnant because she wants the pot. She wants the pot belly. Is that the whole purpose of that scene?
I think it's just because she's French. Moving on to the much more exciting part of this, though. He goes back to the apartment, and he ends up shooting Vincent, which I noticed Vincent goes to the bathroom several times in this movie. Like, he's always in the bathroom.
Yes. Okay. The reason for that, and I didn't realize it until today, is because he's got a fucking heroin addiction, and heroin constipates you. Opiate addiction. In fact, there's a drug that's advertised on television today that will alleviate your constipation due to opiates, your prescription to opiates. So that's why he's always in the bathroom, is that he's constipated. And if you notice, anytime something bad happens in the movie, it's because Vincent's in the bathroom.
And even in the scene where he's not in the bathroom, the danger comes from the bathroom in the shooting scene.
Absolutely.
The first shooting scene.
Yeah. All right. So question, do you think that was Vincent's Mark 10 that he just happened to leave on the counter, or was that Marsellus' Mark 10?
Oh, I think Vincent just left it on the counter. We see that Vincent's a little preoccupied for a hitman. He's kind of always thinking about different stuff. I think he got overconfident, left it there. He's probably bored of waiting around. Nobody thought that Butch would actually come back.
Hold on. You got to realize what just happened. He's had his conversation with Jules, who's come to the epiphany and is quitting. So Vincent has a lot to think about. So this has been a change. Normally, Vincent and Jules would have been together, but because Jules is gone, so Vincent's probably, some of our best thinking is done on the toilet. And maybe that's true for Vincent.
Well, he's actually reading the book from a previous scene. That's why and if you notice, he's like at the end of the book, but he's there with Marsellus. Marsellus has just gone out for coffee and donuts and is on his way back. But I love the fact that, like, at the end, they made the conscious choice for Butch, who just murdered a man. He's like, I can get out of this. I'm going to go back and, like, wipe off the Uzi. Because I was like, he's got to go back and wipe off the Uzi. And then he does. And again, that's the brilliance of this fucking movie.
Yeah, his effort to hide the crime, he leaves the body in his apartment where he lives.
Right.
And just wipes it down with a tissue and then just, like, puts it out. He's like, all right, that's good. I'm out of here.
So as Butch is waiting at a traffic light in the Honda, Marsellus walks by, recognizes him, and chases him into a pawn shop. The owner, Maynard, captures them at gunpoint and ties them up in the basement. Maynard is joined by Zed, a security guard. They then take Marsellus into another room to rape him, leaving the Gimp, a silent figure in a bondage suit, to watch Butch. Butch breaks loose and knocks out the Gimp. He's about to flee but decides to save Marsellus. As Zed rapes Marsellus, Butch kills Maynard with a katana retrieved from the pawn shop. Marsellus retrieves Maynard's shotgun and then shoots Zed in the dick. Marsellus informs Butch that they are even so long as he tells no one about the rape and departs Los Angeles forever. Butch picks up Fabienne on Zed's chopper and drives to the train station.
So I need to ask Gene a question here because you're my sub-dom expert.
Sure.
The Gimp.
Yeah.
Does the Gimp stay in the box generally most of the day, or does Zed preposition him in the box right before that they come there? How does that work? How's the life of a Gimp?
Yeah, so the Gimp he does not live there. I mean, the Gimp has his own life or whatever. This is a role that he's playing. So basically, when you're in a Gimp suit or a full body suit, the idea is to make you faceless and silent unless you're unzipped to speak. Essentially, it's the ultimate form of submission, where you are you're the bottom sub. So he's essentially a living sex toy, and that's a role that he likes playing. So I would imagine that he was put in the box prior to them showing up. This is all role play. However, I don't know how long he was in that box beforehand. It could have been a while. You just have to wake him up.
To this day, this scene is the reason I'll never set foot into a pawn shop.
Yeah, I after seeing this movie, I thought that every pawn shop had a basement in it, and that was going to happen. Look, I was 14 years old, and the Gimp scene made my head explode. And I felt a little sympathy for the guy because he's just kind of giggling and pointing, and he doesn't seem so bad. I mean, he's a sub; he's not going to do anybody any harm, and he gets knocked the fuck out, but he doesn't get killed.
So we mentioned before how a lot of the violence is done off screen. The rape is done in a way that, to me, makes it even more horrifying. We don't see the physical penetration of Marsellus. All you see is Maynard's face as he's watching on, and he's breathing heavily, and you can see him grunting. Oh, yeah. That is worse than actually watching Ving Rhames get raped.
Yeah, and the same when Bruce Willis is scanning progressively for cooler and cooler weapons, like he's like a baby discovering candy, you know. And I love those scenes where you keep seeing the camera angle from where the weapon is positioned, and you're wondering, what is it? What's the next thing? It's it's a hammer, it's a chainsaw, it's a fucking katana blade. But during that whole time, as he's taking his sweet ass time, you're just hearing Ving Rhames being raped downstairs.
Yeah, I never actually understood why they needed the Gimp in the scene to begin with. Like, I mean, I get that you're supposed to believe that these are the kind of mean men that would keep a sub in a leather suit down in a trunk, and I get that that's supposed to invoke that these are pretty terrible men, but the Gimp really doesn't serve any other purpose than that, right?
Oh, it serves the purpose of everybody talking about it. Like it was a memorable part, and again, I want to point out though that there might be some criticism of this scene as vilifying gay culture or S&M. I don't believe that any of these guys is gay. Like that's not what this is about. It is about power, but these are rapists. Like they're not gay men. They're rapists, and they're there to rape other men, which is essentially, when you think about it from a rapist perspective, that is even more satisfying than raping a woman, because a man is seen as more powerful. So it's like even more control being exerted. As he says, the spiders caught some flies. It is fucked up, and please don't associate that with homosexuality.
Yeah, I don't think they're that discerning. They would have raped almost anyone who had come in. And I'm sorry, I'm a big stickler for medical accuracy. There is no chance that he survives long enough to get those hard pipe hitting niggers over there to pull his fingernails and toenails out. If you're shot in the dick, you got to bleed out in maybe a minute or two.
I don't know. It's a shotgun, right? So it's a spray, right? So it doesn't necessarily blow off the dick, right? It just
but in that general area, in your upper thigh, is all your arteries, your major veins and blood vessels. Oh, that look like chopped meat. You're going to bleed out.
I do have to say, Ving Rhames was perfect in this role. The fact that when he's talking about what he's going to do to Zed, when he's going to bring over a couple friends and go all medieval on his ass, it was just perfect. It made me happy to know that this movie utilized Ving Rhames in such a way that made him such a badass.
Yeah, that exchange when Bruce Willis asks if he's okay, and he says, "I'm pretty fucking far from okay." You see the tension in Butch's body. His arm is flexed, he's frozen, and he is checking. So you're seeing that Marsellus Wallace is once again. I mean, he's just flipped it and gained control of the situation immediately. And the guy who just rescued him, who just killed these guys, Butch, is scared shitless of him again.
Without a doubt. Sometime earlier, after Vincent and Jules have executed Brett in his apartment, another man bursts out of the bathroom and shoots wildly, missing every time. Jules and Vincent then shoot him. Jules then decides that their lucky escape was a miracle, to which Vincent disputes. As Jules drives, Vincent accidentally shoots Brett's associate Marvin in the face. They hide the car at the home of their associate Jimmy, who insists they deal with the problem before his wife comes home. Marsellus sends his cleaner, Winston Wolf, who directs Jules and Vincent to clean the car, hide the body in the trunk, dispose of their bloody clothes, and drive the car to a junkyard.
Okay, first of all, was I the only idiot for all these years who thought Alexis Arquette coming out of the bathroom was actually Jerry Seinfeld?
No, that was a big internet rumor, and a lot of people thought the same thing.
I swear it looks just like him.
They do look a lot alike.
Yeah, one cool thing, if you watch the scene when they first do the shooting where he pops out, all the bullet holes behind Jules and Vincent are already there before he's shot. So you can just see it. It's one of the few errors that Tarantino made in continuity.
Well, also when Samuel L. Jackson picks up the burger for the first time, it's a full burger that he picks up, and then when he puts it in his mouth, it already has bite marks. So yeah, there's a couple continuity here, but it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that we're willing to forgive. In the scene with the Colombian taxi driver, you could definitely tell that background is not real. Who gives a shit? The movie's great.
Yeah.
But
can we agree that Mr. Wolf has set the bar for all future cleaners in movies? I mean, he set my expectation for Mike Ehrmantraut. I don't imagine anyone more professional. If I had a dead body turn up in my wife's car, I would want Mr. Wolf.
When he gets that cup of coffee in the middle of all that, he takes a sip of it and just looks at Quentin Tarantino and kind of just lifts the cup a little bit like, it's brilliant.
Well, they not only... But again, it goes back to the language and why the script is so fucking perfect, because that whole exchange with Harvey Keitel and Tarantino wouldn't be possible without Vincent Vega telling him this fucking coffee's good. He's like, don't fucking tell me how my coffee is. I know my fucking coffee's good.
That was actually the part of the movie. The only part of the movie that I really did not like is the Dead Nigger storage script is genius. I mean, the whole thing. Did you see a sign out there? The coffee's fucking good. All that stuff. Quentin Tarantino is insufferable. He does a cameo in every movie. No. The dude cannot act.
No, I disagree.
The entire scene where he is negotiating with Mr. Wolf about the cost of all of his linens and whether or not, his uncle or his cousin who bought him that bedroom set was a millionaire. That shit was gold. This was the one time Tarantino gets a pass.
I absolutely love Tarantino's cameo role in this film, and I actually liked him in From Dusk Till Dawn. So I'm actually a big fan of Tarantino appearing in films. So I liked it. But this asks the question: is Vincent just an incompetent hitman? I mean, you asked that question before, but think about it. Vincent's role should have been to go back and check all the rooms to see if anyone was there, right?
I'm just going to remind you that Vincent is doing heroin. Like, he is a heroin addict. Like, heroin and hitman don't really go together that well. And, I think I mean, do you really have to ask the question? Let's see. He gets shot in a house that he's supposed to be watching.
Right.
He's asking someone to say please when they're on the clock. And on top of that, he's got, he fucking shoots Marvin straight in the face.
Exactly. But like you said, Harvey Keitel is brilliant. I'll be there in 30 minutes. He shows up 9 minutes, 37 seconds later. It's fucking on point. And then the final scene or the final conversation where he asks the guys, hey, I'll give you a ride back home. And where do you guys live? And they said, Redondo and Inglewood. He's like, I see a taxi in your future. Like, no one else could deliver that more perfectly than fucking Harvey Keitel. It was brilliant. So then the movie takes the next scene is at a diner. Jules tells Vincent he plans to retire from his life of crime, taking their miraculous survival as a sign. While Vincent, again, is in the bathroom, the couple from earlier, Pumpkin and Honey Bunny, hold up the restaurant. When Jules holds Pumpkin at gunpoint, Honey Bunny becomes hysterical and trains her gun on him. Vincent returns with his gun trained on her, creating another Mexican standoff. Jules recites the biblical passage, expresses ambivalence about his life of crime, and allows the robbers to take his own cash and leave. Jules and Vincent then leave the diner with the briefcase. End movie.
I found it strange that the dialogue when Honey Bunny and Pumpkin announce that they're robbing the place, from the beginning of the movie to the end, it changes. And it's such iconic dialogue that I wondered if it was intentional. I couldn't find any evidence either way, but it really bugged me. It bugged me that they didn't just use the same exact... I mean, it's a script. You should be able to get it right both times.
Yeah, and there's an interesting cut out there of the movie, because I was going to ask, is the movie truly as good as we believe it is, or is it only through the ingenuity of the ingenious way that they edited it and mix and match the pieces that makes it so compelling? So someone has gone out and taken the movie and recut it chronologically. And those opening sets are one of the only that are shown twice and do vary. But I want to ask, do you believe this movie holds up? Because it's been a slurp fest this entire hour. The three of us have been just circled up and just taking everything we can. Would the movie be the same if it was cut and displayed in a more traditional manner?
Absolutely not. It wasn't set up to be that way. The script is intended to tell a story in a nonlinear format.
Yeah, pretty much every decision that was made in this movie was intentional and brilliantly done. They made no missteps. I mean, you can't reorganize the movie, and that's a critical part of the film's quality.
Did you also like the fact that John Travolta's character lived at the end? Like, even though he dies, the final scene with him walking out, like, did that give you some sort of satisfaction? Like, even though now we think of Vincent as like a bumbling idiot, at the time, the first couple times you watched this, you were like, he was your favorite character.
Yeah, I mean, I was glad to see him walk out, just to see him stick his pistol into those shorts with his UC Santa Barbara Banana Slugs t-shirt. Those outfits are killer.
Yeah, there's a website where you can go and buy all the t-shirts that are featured in Pulp Fiction. We'll share that on our social media. I'm definitely getting that crazy cat one that Samuel L. Jackson is wearing, the light blue one. That concludes our review of the movie. Now's the time of the podcast where we break out our Shat meter and give you, the audience, the number of wipes that this movie would take to get off your butt. If you aren't familiar with our Shat meter, it's a 0 to 5 rating scale. 0 wipes is a go shit. It's absolutely perfect. It's drop and go. It's divine intervention. You think you need a wipe, but you look down and nothing is there. People have fired shots at you, but it's completely missed. 5 wipes is the equivalent of a close-range gunshot going off in the backseat of a Chevy Nova. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're picking out parts of it from your Jerry curl. It's disgusting. With that being said, how many wipes, Big D, would this movie need to take to get off your ass?
God, I just don't want to be one of those dicks, like the baseball writers who won't, vote in like Derek Jeter to the Hall of Fame on the first ballot just out of principle. I feel myself not wanting to give a 0 because I'm holding on to it for, some special event. But fuck, it's a 0 movie. It's a 0 white movie. It's 2.5 hours long. Every scene is shot beautifully. The dialogue is perfect. It's ingrained in the pop culture. It's ingrained in my mind. The soundtrack's incredible. I don't know how they can improve it. So if I didn't give it a 0, I'd just be a hypocrite. So it's a 0 white movie.
Gene Lyons.
Amen, Big D. I was smiling from ear to ear. The first time I saw this movie was, 22 years ago? And it still holds up incredibly. My girlfriend fell asleep on her first viewing of it. I was pissed. I was offended by the fact that any human being could watch this masterpiece and not be gripped by it. So, again, 0 wipes. It does not get any better than this for me.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think this is a full consensus. This is our first across-the-board 0 white movie. It is perfect. It defined movie making in the 90s. It made me love Tarantino movies. And he's just the master. I don't know. I mean, you call this a slurp fest. It definitely is. 0 wipes for me. If we were to add that and then divide by 3, what does that give us, Gene?
That's 0, Raj. 0.
So that is now officially our number 1 movie. And I'll give you the top 3. With a 0, it is Pulp Fiction. Our number 2 movie is Terminator 2 with a 0.3. And coming in number 3 is Die Hard with a 0.7. So those are our top 3 movies.
And honestly, I wish we could differentiate even more because Terminator 2 is a very good movie, but they're not even in the same league. I mean, come on.
No, but that's it. You have to decide each movie on its own merit. You're never going to be able to compare a truly artistic endeavor like this to an action or to a comedy. When would you ever compare, Die Hard or Coming to America with this? You're not going to be able to.
No, again, this set the standard. This is the gold standard when it comes to movies. With that being said, we have a feature also on our podcast where we give shout outs to the audience. Gene, how can our audience members get a shout out?
To show your support for the podcast and get your name read on the podcast, just go to shatthemovies.com and scroll down. You'll see a little box slide out that says get a shout out, and just pop your name right in there. So this week's, we would like to say thank you with shout outs to Lance's kids, Emma and Luke. God, I hope you weren't listening to this. Miles, Mary, Gus, and last but not least, Munch Makuchi. Thanks so much for your shout outs. Suck my deek.
That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. We're also on Facebook. Just search for Shat the Movies Podcast. Our website is shatthemovies.com. That's where you vote on our movies. Big D, what do we have upcoming?
Next week is, like we talked about, 95. It's going to be Shawshank. It's so far ahead. So Shawshank Redemption will be next week's movie.
Okay, and then we also plan out our weeks in advance. If people go to the website and vote on future movies, what are some themes that we have?
So the week after that is the best of Harrison Ford, then the best of Nicolas Cage, 90s disaster movies, best of Charlie Sheen, alien movies, and the one that I'm going to add tonight is animated films.
That's awesome. If you have a suggestion for a theme or for movies you want us to watch, you can do that by emailing us. That email address is hosts@shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, and American Gods. You can find all the information on that podcast on the website shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Gene Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next Thursday for our review of Shawshank Redemption. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. Take care. Good night.
But it was sweet when they killed Ellis, and with a little